Hello and good day to
Hello
everyone.
and good day to everyone.
I hope you are keeping well
I
and in
hope
good health. Thank you for joining us for today's Migration Outlook webinar on the topic My Bukas Pa, the Children of OFWs in the Time of COVID-19. The first part of the title, My Bukas Pa, translates in English into There's Still Tomorrow or Tomorrow is Coming Up. My name is Marla Asis. I'm Executive Director of the Scalabrini Migration Center, and I will be moderating this webinar with Dr. Melissa Garabiles. We are approaching month 4 of the pandemic and the new normal, which we abruptly have to live with and adjust to since mid-March for most of us. From a world in motion, our lives came to a screeching stop because of COVID-19. As the world came to a standstill and being continually told to stay home, the many repercussions of the pandemic hit us in all fronts: economically, socially, politically, and not the least, psychologically and emotionally. The economic impact is perhaps the most evident. At least 7.3 million Filipino workers here in the country lost their jobs due to the effect of COVID-19, the highest since 1998, according to the Department of Labor and Employment. In addition, some 350,000 overseas Filipino workers or OFWs lost their jobs in various countries. The displacement has resulted in the untimely return to the Philippines. At least some 56,000 have been repatriated in June, mostly OFWs in the sea-based sector, and another 42,000 are expected to return home in the coming weeks. If the current state of the global economy continues or worsens, even those who are trying to remain abroad may not be left with much choice but to return home. In the face of the unsettling impact of the pandemic, the University of Hong Kong and the Scalabrini Migration Center, and in cooperation with the Episcopal Commission for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People, thought of coming up with a Migration Outlook webinar series to shed light on the challenges and concerns experienced by migrants and their families, and to consider insights from researchers and practitioners, and with a view to providing suggestions and possibilities to support migrants and their families weather this pandemic. The Migration Outlook webinar series is supported by the University of Hong Kong's Knowledge Exchange Initiative, which aims to make knowledge and research-based evidence more widely shared and to translate research-based knowledge to improve lives. This goal also jives with the theme of the recently concluded online conference of the National Research Council of the Philippines, where we were reminded about research as public good. For this episode, we focus on Kumustahan, or a conversation with the children of OFWs to know how they are doing, how they are coping, what are their concerns, and how are their families affected by the pandemic. We cast light on the impact of COVID-19 on the children of OFWs to highlight that while everybody is affected by the pandemic, its impact on our responses may be experienced and felt differently by adults and young people. Our other resource persons will share some insights from their research and/or counseling experience with young people. Lived experiences, along with research and practice, may help us understand what young people are going through. We will wrap up with some steps or perhaps raise more questions that we need to reflect further upon on how young people can be supported at this time and also to consider how they can contribute to the crafting of our post-pandemic society. It's great that our participants in today's webinar come from various fields and backgrounds. We are joined by OFWs, families of OFWs, migrants associations, young people, researchers, professors, teachers, counselors, pastoral workers, decision makers, government officials, and representatives of international organizations. Based on those who registered, we have a transnational audience. Joining our participants from the Philippines are those based in Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, Nepal, the UAE, Canada, the US, and the UK. The language of the webinar will be a combination of Filipino and English. We will try our best to provide a summary in English for statements made in Filipino. During our 1 hour and 30-minute webinar, We have reserved some 15 to 20 minutes for the open forum. Please write your questions in the comments section of this live video. We will be taking note of your comments and questions and will try to address them the best way we can. Our partner, the Episcopal Commission for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People, launched a contest in line with this webinar. We are inviting ANAC OFWs who are joining us to send your reactions to the webinar. We will also post the details in the comments section of Facebook. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dr. Melissa Garabiles, who will be moderating the next part. Dr. Garabiles is Assistant Professor and Clinical Psychologist at the Department of Psychology, Ateneo de Manila University. She is also a volunteer psychologist of UGAD Foundation. She is a member of the Global Community Mental Health Department of Psychology, University of Macau, where she did her postdoctoral fellowship and where she is now a faculty collaborator. She has many publications on mental health, positive psychology, and migration. So Melissa, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Marla, for your introduction. So I'm going to show you, to start off, I'm going to show you a photo. You've probably seen this photo online in social media. So this photo shows that, as mentioned by Dr. Marla, everyone is affected by the COVID crisis. We are all in the same storm. So lahat tayo nakakaranas ng parehas na bagyo. However, the effect of COVID or of the storm to people varies because we are in different boats. So iba-iba yung mga barko natin. There are those who are affected, but because their boats are large and sturdy, or they have enough financial resources, they are not that affected. But there are those who are really affected. So yun yung mga may maliliit na mga barko, especially in terms of their health and their jobs. So one group that is especially affected are the OFWs. There are already thousands of OFWs who have been repatriated because of the pandemic. There are OFWs who are stranded. So there are those who are stranded abroad and they want to come back home, but they could not fly home. But there are those who are already in the Philippines, but they are stranded in Manila and they could not go back to their hometowns. And there are also those who already have contracts but could not leave. And we also have OFWs who are still based abroad. But as Dr. Marla said, their jobs are still not as stable as they were before the pandemic. So these OFWs experience many changes, and these changes also affect their families. So today and in the next few weeks, we will ask them how they are. So kukumustahin natin sila. We will ask about their experiences and feelings about the changes that are happening to them. Today, we have 5 speakers. So we have 2 children of OFWs, 1 migration researcher, and 2 practitioners who provide psychological services to OFWs and their families. So first, I'll introduce the 2 children of OFWs, so yung youngest sa ating mga speakers. First, we have Ianta Irinel de la Cruz Manawis. She is 17 years old. She is a grade 12 student from University of the East Caloocan. She loves science. She is taking up STEM track now that she is in senior high school. She is also into writing, and she is a part-time online editor. And aside from science, love din niya yung arts. She is into dancing, painting, and drawing. In fact, she has sold some of her artwork here in the Philippines and even abroad. And then last year, 2019, she was given an award by the CBCP ECMI. She was one of the 10 outstanding sons and daughters of OFWs student achievers. And she was also featured before in ABS-CBN Balitang Global, where she was interviewed. So that's Ianta. She's in Caloocan right now. So from Caloocan, we will go to Marikina, where we will have our second speaker, Vincent Pedro. So Vincent is also 17 years old and also a grade 12 student, this time from Asian College. So he has varied extracurricular activities. He is an athlete, he is a swimmer, he is also a cook, and he has participated in cooking events in his school. And actor din siya. He is also into theater art. So Vincent is really well-rounded and very talented. So from Marikina, we will go later to Hong Kong, where we will talk with um, Dr. Lucy Jordan, who is the co-principal investigator of the CHAMP-C project. So later, let's ask her what CHAMP-C is all about. Dr. Lucy is an associate professor and associate dean in social work at the University of Hong Kong. Her research focuses on migration, families, and well-being, including field-based research, capacity building with nonprofit organizations, and policy development. So from Hong Kong, let's go back to the Philippines. So we have two speakers who are both part of UGAD Foundation. So UGAD Foundation stands for Ugnayan at Tulong para sa Maralitang Pamilya Foundation. UGAT is an NGO based in Ateneo de Manila University. They provide services like psychological interventions and pastoral care to different groups in the Philippines and even abroad. So nakarating na sila sa maraming bansa and different continents. Included in the group that they provide service to are OFWs and their families. So first we have Kuya Kaloy or Carlos Lagaya, who is the project director of the Panatag project. Panatag stands for Pamilya na ng Ibang Bansa, Aruga at Kaagapay. So under Panatag project are three workshops. So una is the Anak workshop para sa mga kabataan, sa mga children of OFWs. Second is Kaisa workshop, or which stands for Kasama sa Pag-iisa. And third workshop is Alab Youth Camp, also for children. So Kuya Kaloy has an MA in pastoral theology, and he has conducted counseling to different groups who were affected by natural disasters. Kasama na dyan yung landslide sa Leyte, pagputok ng Mount Mayon sa Albay, and Typhoon Ondoy we experienced here in NCR. And he also conducted counseling among those who were affected by the shooting incident in Resorts World and piracy in Somalia. So that's Kuya Kaloy. And then after Kuya Kaloy, we have, last but not the least, Dr. Mark Anthony Avenir, who is a trained volunteer counselor at Pugat, and he provides psychological first aid during times of crisis. He has a PhD in social development and MA in community development, both from UP Diliman. Isa rin siyang action researcher and program and project manager in development projects. So as you can see, we have very interesting and very varied guest speakers this afternoon. So umpisahan na natin ang ating kumustahan. Let's start with the youngest guest speakers, our two children of OFWs. So usually, when you watch TV or in social media, what we see are OFWs, ano nangyayari sa kanila, which is very important. But we rarely see the side of the children. So yun yung gagawin natin ngayong hapon. So it's important to ask the children themselves what their experiences are. So let's start with Ayanta first, and then later kumustahin natin si Vincent. So Ayanta, hello?
Hello.
Hello. So, baka may nakalimutan akong sabihin tungkol sa'yo nung in-introduce kita. Baka may pwede ka pang i-share tungkol sa sarili mo or tungkol sa family mo.
Ayun po, I am 17 years old po ngayon. Mag-18 na po ako this August. Kaso hindi po nakakapag-celebrate kasi may pandemic po. Yan. Tapos, incoming grade 12 din po ako. I am the eldest among my two siblings na both males. And my father is here with us in the Philippines po.
And then your mother?
My mother is in Abu Dhabi po as dental assistant.
Dental assistant. So mag-hi ka sa kanila. Ang nanonood sila sa'yo ngayon.
Hi po.
Yes. So, na-mention mo no kanina na malapit ka na mag-birthday, malapit na ang debut mo, pero hindi nga ma-celebrate dahil sa pandemic. So, overall, kumusta ka na ba ngayong pandemic na meron tayong COVID crisis?
Okay naman po ako ngayong pandemic. Thankful po ako na yung family ko po ay safe and wala naman pong nagkakasakit sa amin, thankfully. Yun po. And ngayong quarantine po, nagstay lang po ako sa bahay. Inaalagaan ko po yung kapatid ko, baby brother na 2 years old. Yun. And nag-i-study din po ako for the college entrance exams.
So kahit walang school, nag-aaral pa rin. Ano yung mga pagbabagong nangyari sa buhay mo since nag-start itong pandemic and yung quarantine?
Siguro po yung one of the biggest changes that I encountered is the lack of freedom. I really like to go outside to unwind, especially kapag may stress po sa sa homework, sa school, ganun po. And I'm expecting this summer of my 2020 that my family will be going out a lot and I would be studying with my friends, pero yun po, hindi nga po natuloy because of the pandemic.
Oo. So anong nararamdaman mo na hindi ka nakakalabas for the past, ang dami na, 4, 5 months?
Actually po, medyo nakaka-frustrate kasi po, tapos nakakalungkot, and it somehow feels suffocating,
Right.
lalo na repeated tasks lang every day and same environment every day. Medyo
Yeah.
nakakalungkot nga po yung gano'n.
Ano pa yung mga changes na nangyayari yan? So hindi makalabas, ano pa yung mga nagbago sa'yo?
Sa akin po, may positive naman din po kasi kami po ng siblings ko yung naatasan sa household chores, and natututo din po kaming maglinis ng bahay, gano'n.
So may natututunan pa rin kahit nasa bahay lang. So kumustahin ko naman yung family mo, yung father mo, and yung mga siblings mo. How are they dealing with the pandemic?
My father own a water station po. And nakakatulong din po sa amin yun for the extra income dahil this pandemic nga po, need ng mga supplies, gano'n. Marami pong tao na patuloy pa rin na umorder. And yung mga brother ko naman po, yung second brother ko po ay grade 9 na po sa pasukan. Ayun po, nasa bahay lang din, and he's also stuck to his cellphone technology dahil nga po walang magawa, di makalabas. Tapos yung baby brother ko naman po, siya po talaga yung gustong lumabas kasi hindi siya makastay sa bahay, makulit, gustong magtatakbo-takbo. Medyo mahirap po alagaan kasi makulit.
Oo. How about yung mommy mo na nasa abroad pa? Kumusta naman siya?
Last April po, my mother had undergone a COVID test kasi po one of her housemates tested positive, and she also felt some symptoms of the virus. But thankfully, negative naman po. And she's now perfectly working na po ulit.
Okay. Buti naman, negative siya. Anong naramdaman mo nung nalaman mo na kailangan magpa-test ng mommy mo? Tapos malayo pa siya sa inyo.
Sobra po akong kinabahan kasi sa naririnig ko po sa COVID talaga, malala po. And naisip ko po nun na nag-pray ako kay Lord na sana po wag mawala si mama. Di po namin kakayanin. Ganun po. Sobrang kinakabahan po ako nung mga panahon na hindi pa alam yung result. Pero nung nalaman na, sobrang nakahinga po kami ng maluwag.
Oo. So, na-mention mo, no, na nag-pray ka nung nalaman mo na kailangan magpa-test ng mommy mo. Ano pa yung mga bagay na nakatulong sa'yo ngayong pandemic?
Siguro po, yung knowing that my family is healthy po and kasama ko sila palagi, nakatulong din po yun. And yung mga relatives din po namin na nakakausap namin everyday, ganun, nakakatulong din po. Kasi may mapagsasabihan kami ng mga worries namin, sama-sama kami sa ano po namin, worries.
Oo. So, feeling mo, hindi lang ikaw yung mag-isa na nakakaranas nito kasi may nasasabihan ka. Meron bang mga, sa tingin mo, makakatulong sana sa'yo ngayong pandemic?
Makakatulong po.
Oo. What help do you
As
think do you need yung mga makakatulong sa'yo or sa family mo?
Siguro po, wala naman po masyado. I think, we're doing fine naman po sa ngayong pandemic. It's just that last April or May, we had to make budget adjustments kasi
Okay.
half of my mother's salary is cut kasi their
Oh,
clinic needed to reduce the employee.
oo.
So, my mother is unable to work for those times.
Oo.
Kaya po, medyo nahihirapan po kami dun po sa financial part ng ano namin. Pero
Oo.
okay naman na po ngayon. Back to normal na po
Better
si
na.
mama.
Buti naman, back to normal. So, last question lang. Ano yung mga, pag sasabihin ko yung word na future or kinabukasan, ano yung mga naiisip mo tungkol dito?
Sa akin po, magulo, complicated. With
Mm-mm.
the pandemic ongoing po and the news about our government, medyo nababother po ako. And
Mm-mm.
sobrang hirap po siguro bumalik sa normal ngayon
Right.
as long as wala pang vaccine. I just
Mm-mm.
hope that with the businesses forced to close, sana po makasurvive po yung family namin and other families po ngayong pandemic.
Yes. Sa tingin mo, ano yung pwedeng makatulong para hindi naman ganun kagulo, hindi ganun ka-complicated?
Sa tingin ko po, I think we should just pray po talaga and
Mm-mm.
follow the advices of the doctors and the officials po para hindi na makadagdag sa
Yes.
mga sa pagtaas ng cases po. It's better to stay home po kaysa lumabas-labas talaga.
Yes. So, thank you, Ayanta. Balikan ka namin later, ha? So, now we'll listen naman to, kumustahin natin si Vincent. Hi, Vincent. Our very
Hi po.
very talented 17-year-old. So, nag-share ako kanina nung tungkol sa'yo, introduction mo. Meron ba akong nakalimutan na i-share na gusto mong ipaalam sa mga tao about yourself?
So yun po, I am 17 years old. I live in Marikina City and I am a grade 12 student of Asian College, Quezon City.
Yes.
And ang strand ko po is Technical, Vocational, and Livelihood Education and my track is cookery.
Okay. Talagang mahilig ka sa magluto.
Opo.
Oo. Kwento mo naman sa amin yung pamilya mo. Ilan kayo? Sino yung kasama mo dyan sa Marikina? Sino yung OFW sa family mo, sa parents mo?
Opo. Ang OFW po sa amin is si Papa po. Ang pangalan po niya is Malawes. He works as a seafarer. Yun po. For about 28 years na po siya ngayong nagtatrabaho
28.
abroad.
Oo. Saan
Opo,
siya
and
ngayon?
nasa Brazil po siya ngayon.
Brazil, oo. And then yung mommy mo, kasama mo dyan?
Opo, yun po, si mama po, isa po siyang public school teacher. For about
Mm.
27 years na po siyang public school teacher ngayon.
Mm.
And meron po akong isang kapatid. Ako po yung
Oo.
mas matanda sa amin dalawa. Isa po siyang
Oo.
grade 9 student from Santa Elena National High School.
Mm. So, isa kang
Opo.
kuya. So,
Opo.
kumusta ka naman ngayong may pandemic at may quarantine?
We're doing okay naman po. I'm doing okay naman po ngayong past few months.
Mm. Ano yung mga changes, mga pagbabago na nangyari sa buhay mo? Lalo na the past 4 or 5 months.
Within this past few months po, life has been hard. But we are trying to stay motivated and hope that we all can get to live our normal lives again.
Mm. Ano yung mga specific changes na nangyari sa'yo? Kanina kwento ni Ayanta na parang nakaka-suffocate kasi hindi makalabas. Ikaw naman, ano
Opo.
yung mga pagbabagong na experience mo?
Ayun po, sobrang nakaka-boring po sa bahay. Dati po
Oo.
kasi halos araw-araw po kaming nagagala kasama po yung mga tropa, gano'n. Ngayon po
Oo.
hindi na po namin 'yun nagagawa kasi bawal po, eh.
Oo, bawal. Ayun nga, ang
Opo,
dami mong activities, no? Tapos biglang sa bahay lang.
ta's
Um,
nawala naman po bigla.
oo. Ano pa yung mga nagbago sa'yo sa buhay niyo, ng pamilya mo?
Ayun po, si mama po, teacher po kasi siya, sanay po siyang araw-araw na pumapasok. Ngayon
Oo.
natingga lang po siya sa bahay ngayon, 'di na po siya
Oo.
nakakalabas. Yung kapatid ko po, sa bahay lang naman po siya lagi, eh.
Oo.
Puro cellphone lang naman po siya ngayon, kahit po dati puro cellphone lang po siya, eh.
Oo. So, sa kanya wala masyadong pagbabago. So,
Opo.
anong nafi-feel mo tungkol sa mga changes sa inyo na all of a sudden, you're at home, your mom is at home? Ano yung mga naramdaman mo tungkol dito?
Hindi po kasi kami sanay na laging
Mm.
magkakasama sa bahay. Sanay po kami yung pag-uwi po namin, wala pa po yung mama ko, gano'n, nasa school pa po siya.
Hmm.
Minsan ako
Mm.
lang po, pati po yung lola ko sa bahay, gano'n. Ta's ngayon
Mm.
po lagi na po kami magkakasama, gano'n. Yun po
Oo.
yung positive na nangyari,
Mm.
na we get to ano, enjoy each other's company more.
Mm. Anong mga ginagawa
Na
niyo ng magkakasama?
ayun, mas kumakain na po kami magkakasama ngayon,
Oh.
sabay-sabay na po. Tapos dati po kasi hindi po kami masyadong nagkakakuwentuhan sa mga ganap namin sa buhay. Ngayon
Oo.
nagagawa na po namin 'yun.
Oo. So, mas nakakasama kumain, ganyan. Kumusta naman yung father mo who is still abroad?
Opo, si papa po, kasi huli po namin siyang nakausap last month po. Okey naman daw
Mm.
po siya do'n ngayon,
Mm.
and I'm sure okey lang naman daw po siya do'n kasi hindi po sila allowed na bumaba ng port kapag po
Oo.
nasa mga port sila. Hindi po sila allowed na bumaba po talaga. Sa loob lang po sila ng barko.
Oo. So, kampante naman kayo since hindi parang naka-quarantine na rin sila.
Opo.
Oo. Tapos, yung daddy mo ay uuwi ng Pilipinas, tama ba?
Opo, this month po, hopefully, uuwi na po
Oo.
siya.
Oo. Anong nararamdaman mo na hopefully in a few weeks, nandiyan na siya ulit, nandito na ulit sa Pilipinas?
Ayun, masaya naman po. Kasi
Mm.
siyempre makikita na po namin siya ulit, gano'n. Makakasama na
Mm.
po namin.
Mm. Ano yung mga bagay na nakatulong sa'yo ngayong may pandemic at naka-quarantine ka?
Sa tingin ko po, ang nakatulong po sa'kin ngayong quarantine is siguro po mas natutunan ko pong mas maging close sa family ko. Kasi dati po
Mm.
wala po talaga akong time kasi busy po sa school, busy po sa mga activities, sobrang dami pong ginagawa. Ngayon po, araw-araw na po halos kami magkakasama, gano'n. Dati po
Oo.
hindi po kami masyadong close sa isa't isa, ngayon nagagawa na po namin yung mga gano'n, family
Mm.
activities po.
So, nakatulong na merong family activities. Ano pa yung mga nakatulong sa'yo? Kasi kanina sabi mo, boring, na it's hard to stay motivated and hopeful? Ano pa yung mga nakatulong sa'yo para naman mabawasan yung ganung mga feelings?
Ayun po, ang nakatulong po sa akin para mabawasan yung mga gano'ng feeling is yung
Mm.
siguro po ginagawa ko na lang po, ginagawa ko pong i-distract yung sarili ko by doing household chores po. Yun na lang po yung
Ah,
ginagawa ko. Para
oo,
po iwas boring. Tsaka po
oo,
panonood po ng YouTube, gano'n, Facebook.
oo. So, marami namang mga paraan para makatulong, oo. So, last question lang tapos mamaya babalikan ka namin. So, ano yung mga 'pag sabihin ko yung word na future or kinabukasan, ano yung mga, pumapasok sa isip?
Sa ngayon po kasi malabo pa pong masabi kung ano po yung mangyayari in the future kasi lalo na po ngayon wala pa po talagang naki-create na cure para po
Right,
sa virus. Opo. So,
mm.
mahirap po talagang sabihin kung ano po yung mangyayari in the future. Pero hopefully po, magiging okey naman na po yung lahat tsaka magiging normal na po tayong lahat, gano'n.
Yes, oo. So, ano yung mga kailangan kayang magawa para naman hindi mas maibsan yung mga, stressors ngayon? Ano yung mga puwedeng gawin?
So, siguro po mas alalahanin po natin tsaka mas sundin na lang po natin yung gustong mangyari ng mga ano po natin, mga nakakatanda, gano'n. Yung mga nasa
Mm,
gobyerno po, yun sundin
mm.
na lang po natin siguro yung mga precautions nila kasi hindi lang naman po yun para sa kanila, para din po sa atin yun.
Yeah.
Opo,
So,
yung
follow
kung hindi po nila gusto tayong lumabas, 'wag po tayong lumabas. Kung ayaw po
right,
nila tayong makasalamuha sa mga tao, kung ayaw po nila tayong magkaroon ng big events, para naman po
hmm,
yun sa ikabubuti natin.
mm.
Para po
So, thank you.
mas hindi kumalat yung virus, opo.
Oo, oo. So, thank you, Vincent. So, we
Ah,
learned a lot from our two 17-year-olds who are children of OFWs. So, from experiences of children, let's listen to what science has found about them. So, let's talk to Dr. Lucy Jordan, and who will tell us all about their research. Yes, Dr. Lucy. Yes, hello. Good afternoon.
Hello, Melissa.
Yes,
Nice to see you.
yes,
It was really nice to hear from Mayantha and Vincent as well. I
yes.
could understand maybe a third because some of it
Okay.
was in English, and
Yes.
I wish that I spoke Tagala and could understand it more. But from what I was hearing, I did hear a lot of things that are quite resonant with the research that I have been involved in with my colleagues for the last 13 years. We have run a large project in the Philippines, as well as in Indonesia and
Mm,
Thailand, to try and understand both the big picture as well as to hear the voices of the
mm,
children and to the children as they're growing up. Uh, and it's, of course, since the research has already happened in the past, we have not talked to these families right now during the time
mhm.
of COVID.
Yes.
But when I hear Vincent and Yanta, I feel that I hear probably voices that are quite
Mm,
similar to what we would hear. One
mm,
of the things that really strikes me, again, when I listen to Iantha and Vincent, is one of the topics that we often have in migration research and families is trying to understand what are kind of the trade-offs. What are the things that are given up, but also the things that are gained by either
mm.
having a parent, the mother or
Yeah.
the father, become a migrant, or having the parents stay at home.
Mm,
And like most things in life, right? We find
mm.
that there are differences, and they're not always exactly the same.
Yes.
But one of the things, again, that I hear in Vincent and Ianta's story is resilience. I
Mhm,
hear a kind of strength, inner strength in each of them about kind of adapting
mhm,
to new circumstances and new conditions. And in some ways, this is one of the big questions from a research perspective, which you probably also have feelings about because of your psychological background and training. We wonder, well, will the children of migrants miss some kind of emotional connection and support because their parents are not physically there with them? And might they have trouble later when they face challenging circumstances? And one of the things that Vincent and Iantha's stories say to me is that I think it makes me actually feel hopeful that perhaps the children of migrants have developed some inner strength. And it may well be because they have had to adapt. They've had to adapt to new living arrangements. They've had to adapt to new ways of communicating, new ways of building connection and closeness with their parents. They've had to adapt to perhaps the feeling of being different from their community, their neighbors, if the neighbors are not children of migrants. And that actually this, there may be kind of a silver lining in there, which suggests that, from Iantha and Vincent's examples, that they have some understanding of kind of of how to live with uncertainty, and how to kind of look for hope, look for strength. I heard Iantha talked about faith, and Vincent talked about hope. And again, that these are traits that recognize, these are traits that recognize the possibility for inner strength. And I also heard Vincent speak about the feeling of having the opportunity to spend more time, kind of with family in a way. And again, when a family experiences the kind of change and living apart like migrant families do, one of the things that they miss is some of that connection. So in some ways, that it does allow for that. So yeah, I think it's very very interesting to hear the young people in their own words, talk about kind of their experiences in the moment, and also how that relates to the experiences that they've had over their lifetimes of having their parents living, or one of their parents living overseas.
Yes. So Ayanta mentioned that she had health concerns with her mother because the mother had to be tested for COVID, but then thankfully the mother is okay. She tested negative. Yes.
Yes.
Do you have anything about your research that relates to this?
Yeah, I think, and that's a really interesting point too. I mean, I was thinking about that when she shared. And, it's kind of, again, it's this thing where it shows, I think, a couple sides of the story, which is when someone is far away, and the way that we have connection, is through virtual means, for example, like this. And, and then there can be time zone differences. So communication may be challenging, different things like that. So there's an uncertainty about it. But of course, on the other hand, there is with the virus, for example, right? Having, if a parent was at home and was exposed, then also perhaps the whole family would have been exposed. And, so again, to me, it's about this trade-off where, the distance is difficult, but actually it's also a protective factor in this instance where, we're actually in some ways, it's the family has been protected that way. And the other piece is that even though it's difficult to be far apart, and even though the mother's, in that case, wages have been reduced because of less work, she does still have some work, right? And that again, even though the distance, it is difficult for the family in some ways, it does also provide some security in this instance where, in this time of great global insecurity, where millions of people are losing their jobs everywhere. So So yeah, it makes me think about a number of things there about kind of how the way that the family operates transnationally actually can be a positive thing, even as it is difficult to deal with the feelings of uncertainty.
Right. Okay. So
Mm.
thank you so much. So
Yeah.
we'll get back to you later
Yes.
and during Q&A. Yes. So before we go to our speakers from UGAD Foundation, we want to show you the translation of our conversation with Ayanta and Vincent. Okay. So just some summary points to those who are unable to understand all of what Ayanta and Vincent shared. Yes. Um, so for Ayanta, they had to make economic adjustments because of pay cut of her mother. But it's better now. So the mother is able to earn the same amount now. And Ayanta thinks the future will be a little difficult because of the pandemic and political situation. But she remains hopeful that she and her family and all the other families will be able to survive. And she is advocating for following the advice of doctors and authority figures. So that's Ianta. For Vincent, he said that he feels bored at home. He misses being able to go out with the family, with his friends, and on the other hand, since he and his mother and sibling are all at home, it's also a positive thing because they're able to enjoy each other's time and they're able to talk to each other more, eat together. And he is happy that his father will come back home in a few weeks' time. Okay. He is able to cope by distracting himself, by being productive, doing household chores, watching videos. Like Ianta, Vincent also thinks the future is uncertain, okay? But he hopes that he is also hopeful that things will go back to normal. And he also believes it's really important to follow the guidelines of our government. Okay?
Thank you for sharing the summary. Yeah, for me and hopefully for others as well who may not speak Tagala. Yeah.
And we have, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I can maybe I just will spend a few moments and then we'll move on because I want to make sure we have time for the others to talk. So if you could transition to the next slide, that would be great. Yeah. So I guess because I know we have a diverse audience, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to share a bit about the background of the project that Ms. Marla Artis and I have been working on with our colleagues from across Southeast Asia and other places in the world over the last years, which is the Child Health and Migrant Parents in Southeast Asia CHAMSI study. So I mentioned it already a little bit when I was introducing, kind of some reactions to listening to Ianta and Vincent. And in particular, I've pulled out a few thoughts and ideas about the older group in the last time that we visited the households in 2016, who were aged 17 to 19 at that time. So right around the same age of Ianta and Vincent. And that's kind of why I mentioned that listening to their voices, it sounds to me a lot like the voices of the young people that we have spoken to. And I would just draw the attention here to the graph in the lower corner, just to show how our study actually tried to capture families with children kind of more broadly in two provinces in the Philippines. So households where neither parent was a migrant, as well as households where the mother was away, the father was away, or perhaps both were away. So wanting to kind of try to understand what is similar and different about those things. one of the things that really strikes me again, listening to Iantha and Vincent, is how, yes, Iantha, is a young woman, Vincent is a young man. Vincent's father is the migrant, Iantha's mother is the migrant, but in many ways, a lot of their feelings and experiences are quite similar, even though they have some of those differences, which I think speaks a bit to this the universality of the impact our family lives have on us. So why don't we go quickly to the next slide? So one of the things that I wanted to just kind of mention, which I think has already also come through a bit with listening to Iantha and Vincent, which is that based on our research, most of the children are aware and and speak about how they're understanding that their parents go away primarily for their education, right? So to help, to support their educational experiences and hopefully to help them find, good and meaningful work later. And one of the other things that we have found in some of the work that we have completed is that children, even when they're relatively young, so younger than Vincent and Iantha, already have this understanding about what is being kind of given up and what is being sacrificed, for the future. So, in this, planning for the education, that this experience is happening well because it's better for the family, so it's better for the greater good later in life. And that this in some ways echoes what I mentioned when I said I hear in Vincent and Iantha's stories of their own life, how they have this inner strength. So even though they face uncertainty and perhaps have worries about the future, that there is a strength of self that is developed inside of them. And again, that's quite similar to things that we've heard from the children in our own study. And I think I know that we need to keep moving. I don't want to take up too much time. So I think that we should probably just go on to there's one more slide forward from here. We'll skip over this one. Yeah, okay. Oops, yeah, this one, perfect. And I'll just finish here. So that as one of the things that we found over time is that as children grow older, they see a wider range of choices that are possible for them in terms of the kind of employment and things that they can do. So when our children were younger here, so this example of a 9-year-old Filipina girl, she talks about how, okay, if it's necessary, needed, I might go work overseas like mommy. But then, she also has this very clear experience and feeling which says, no, I'm not going to leave children behind. And I also would not let my husband go overseas. I want my family to stay together. So, there is a very clear sense from this young, this girl about how migration is an option, but it's an option that is not correct for necessarily in her mind for a family. And that really echoes, this idea here, which is that a child's thinking and imagining about migration actually says quite a bit about her actual experience, the experience that she's having here in this moment. And that as I mentioned, as the children get older, they're able to see like, okay, well, migration is one option. And so are maybe some traditional professions like being a doctor or being a teacher. But that in addition to that, there are also other opportunities for employment. There are things, such as entrepreneurship, starting a small business. There are opportunities to, kind of develop artisanal skills, to be, artistic skills. So all different kinds of things that they can do. That could be, possible future trajectories for them. So I think, again, we need to come back to the rest of the participants in the webinar, but thank you very much for letting me share a bit. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very interesting study that you have. Let me just read a few of the comments from our viewers. We have here Yes, Mr. Edwin Coros, who enjoyed listening to the stories of Ayanta and Vincent. And we also have Mr. Nelson Pastor Ajos, who said that the children had a very positive recoil to make a difference during this pandemic. Okay, so just continue sending in your comments. We'll read some of them later. So now from research, let's shift to practice. Let's talk to Kuya Kaloy and then Dr. Mark about their experiences working with children as part of their work in UGAD Foundation. So yes, let's start with Kuya Kaloy. Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon, Miss Melissa. Thank you.
Yes, please share your experiences, your years long of experiences dealing with children of OFWs.
Oo. By the way, magto 12 years na pala kami yung Panatag program.
12
So,
years.
oo, magto 12
Panata
years
has
kaya.
been around for 12 years. Wow.
Yes. And nalilibot na namin yung Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Yun ang ano namin
All
ngayon.
over the Philippines. Wow. Okay.
Yes, oo.
Mhm.
The question is, ano-ano ang epekto sa anak ng biglaang pagbalik ng nanay o tatay sa Pilipinas dahil sa pandemic, ano. And by the way, I'm still here in the Quezon province. So,
Mm.
lockdown. Na-lockdown din ako
Okay.
dito ng 3
Okay.
months.
Okay.
And so ang unang based on my yung mga answer na to based on my online counseling during the pandemic, kasi na-experience ko yung na-experience ko yung sabi ng dalawang bata na na-board.
The board,
So,
yes.
nakulog lang ako sa bahay namin. And then, sabi ko, anong pwede kong gawin sa mga OFW children? Hanggang gumawa ako ng online counseling para sa
Online counseling with children.
exclusive for OFW children and their parents. And number one na nakita ko doon, first effect sa kanila ay parang katulad ng mga walang o yung di OFW, no, shock din sila o pagkabigla na bakit nangyari to? Bakit may ganito? And then yung pagka-shock na yon, patungo siya sa mas malalim pa. So anxiety, sobrang lungkot, and then going to depression, May isa nga akong client na sa sobrang depression na siguro, napadala sa akin ng picture na nag-a-attempt mag-suicide. So, picture na may tali dito. And so, sign yun na talagang malalim yung depression. And then, natatakot sila, itong mga bata na to. So, from shock, pagkabigla, galit, and then shock, and then takot, di ko naisip na ganito yung iniisip ng mga anak ng OFW na pauwi yung mga parents sila. Ang iniisip nila, baka may dalang virus ang parents nila.
Oh.
Oo, baka may dalang virus ang nanay at ang tatay niya. And ang pinakamasakit doon, yung ma-discriminate ka ng barangay nyo, ng bayan nyo. And dito talaga sa Quezon Province, nakita ko yan kung paano magbulong-bulungan ng mga tao and magkwentuhan kapag may dumarating. So, may discrimination pa na napipil sila na baka pag dumating si Papa o si Mama, may sakit siya, tapos anong sasabihin ng mga tao sa amin? Saan kami pupunta? So, maku-quarantine kami. And worries na nung dumating na, kasi yung normal, nung wala pang pandemic, ang positive sa kanila laging feelings ay may mga balikbayan boxes na lang nare-receive. Pero this time, walang balikbayan na marireceive. And unang pumasok sa kanila ay, makakabalik pa ba ako sa pag-aaral?
Okay.
Yun ang number one. And paano namin masusustain to? May isang client pa ako na 50,000 pesos per month ang binabayaran sa house and lot na inuupa na binabayaran nila. So iniisip nila na anong mangyayari? Paano namin babayaran tong utang na to na 50,000 monthly? So andon, tapos so nung dumating na, ano naman ang negative effect ulit? So nanghuhula ang batang to. Kasi may mga parents na sa kanila na hindi sinasabi kung ano condition talaga
Mhm.
na walang trabaho, mabalik na kami dito. So siya, nakikinig lang daw siya kung ano mangyayari. Pero pag lumalabas sa room, itong OFW, nakasmile lang, it's okay. Pero yung anak ang nag-worries na, totoo ba talaga na okay to? So yun, hinuhulaan niya kung anong mangyayari. And then, yan, this time na humahaba na yung lockdown, kasi hindi nila nakasama tong mga parents sila. Nagkakaroon na start na ng tension. Start na bakit ganito ugali niya? Bakit niya ako ginaganito? Bakit may parang pulis sa bahay namin? Bakit may parang nagsasabi ng no, nagsasabi ng dapat i-correct yan? And every time na makakapanood ng news ay natutrauma sila. Lalong-lalo na hindi pa nakakauwi na bakit asan sila ano. And kahapon naka-experience ako na may tumawag na seaman. Last time na nagbi-meeting tayo pala. Hindi pa sila nasuswab pero 3 months na sila sa loob ng barko. So, humihingi ng tulong na paano kami masuswab dito, sinong pwedeng tawagan. So, hindi niya inaamin sa mga anak niya na gano'n ang sitwasyon. So, negative pa rin yun. Pero ang kagandahan sa positive effect ay ngayon nag-i-start na yung malalim na relasyon between the parents and the children. And then nag-i-start na magkumustahan at magkwentuhan. Kanina narinig ko yung sumasabay ng kumakain and nanonood ng Netflix. Ang pinakamahalaga pati ay nag-guide na mas lalong mapalapit sa Diyos. And natutong magtipid at iniiwasan na bawas-bawasan ang mga pagiging magastos. So yun yung mga negative at saka positive So medyo mabigat yung negative talaga na lalong-lalo na yung ma-discriminate ka sa inyong barangay and yung takot na baka may dalang sakit ang parents.
Yes. Okay. So you mentioned that the children you talked to during the pandemic experience shock, anxiety, sadness, depression, and maybe what's unique to these children is fear of discrimination when the parent comes back. Because people might think this OFW parent has COVID.
Yes.
Okay? And they have questions if they can go back to school, how can house loans be paid. And then these children, I think also unique to these children, their parents don't tell them of the status of the job of the OFW parent. So they don't know what's happening. Okay. But you cited some positive effects, which were mentioned also by the kids and by Dr. Lucy. So there's a deeper relationship, they get to talk more. Okay. So what are the good things that children should do in order to lessen negative effects?
Okay, yun na nga. Yung kung anong gagawin na yan, tumutulong sila sa mga magulang nila. And then yun na, sinasabayan ng pagkain sa magulang tuwing kumakain. Nagtatry gawin ang isa pang naging magandang effect, magandang tulong sa kanila Dati nilang hindi nagagawa, pero ngayon nagagawa nila na kaya pa nilang gawin. And then nagtatry mag-online businesses, yung mga medyo may edad na. And pinaka the best na nangyayari is lalong yung close sa God, yung pagdadasal ang sabi nila na nakakatulong sa kanila.
Okay. So help parents. Most of the things that Kuya Kaloy said are things that our guests, children of OFWs also do. Okay?
Yes.
So ginagawa nila Ayanta and Vincent. So helping parents at home, in the household chores, and then praying. And then Kuya Kaloy is suggesting if they're old enough, maybe start an online business to help the family financially. Okay, so thank you, Kuya Kaloy. Let's listen to Mark.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, good afternoon.
Just a short introduction. Hindi ako anak ng OFW for such a long time.
Since I was okay.
In high school. So, Naiintindihan ko yung mga pakiramdam ng mga OF, ng
Right.
mga anak ng OFW. Pero siyempre
Yes.
galing na sa ibang context. Ang context ko walang internet. Pero
Oh.
yung mga anak ng OFW, they have information communication technology, the internet, so they can out to their parents real time. And that also gives a sense of agency to the anak ng OFW, no? Agency na because technology is there, they can communicate with their parents. Pero syempre yung distance pa rin yung barrier. No? The distance poses a problem. Kaya kanina nga nabanggit ni Ayanta no, yung fear na yung nanay niya ay baka may COVID-19. Bilang anak ng OFW, it's very stressful no, to think about that. Of what will happen to your parent because you are not there to be with her or with him. You're very far away. What kind of support can you do? Especially in the context na, lalo na kapag sa barko, mahirap makipag-communicate. Sabi nga ni Vincent kanina, last time that he was able to communicate with his father was a month ago. Dahil yun ang nature, kapag ang barko ay bumabiyahe, tapos kapag hindi ma-internet connection, it's very hard to communicate. A good thing with Vincent was the last news is his dad is doing okay. And he seems safe. But for the rest of the children of OFWs, I understand that would be the lingering fear of what will happen to my parents. And also, Ianta mentioned it will be very difficult if the parent gets COVID-19 because that will really impact a lot in terms of what will happen to the economic remittances that will be sent home. Yun yung ang tawag trade-off no? My parents gone, but in exchange, we have this economic remittances that we could use to build our future so that someday I will not be going abroad anymore. Or if I go abroad, my entire family, no one will be left behind. So that economic remittances is very crucial to the lives of OFW families. And third is, nakita din natin the importance of children to be with responsible primary caregivers or guardians. No, yung support na nandyan yung kung sino yung natirang magulang, grandmother, kapatid, and I'm happy na banggit ni Vincent kanina na because of this lockdown that all of us are experiencing, families are forced to face each other and make quality time and make out of it, no? Isang magandang nangyari sa pandemic na to na nakita natin na importante pala ang ano natin, no? Yung kadalasan kasi we focus so much on work that we forget about our family. So now we are faced to be together and try to be creative and try to find meaning time with one another. Kaya nga nabanggit ni Vincent kanina, there is more quality time and they are now learning on how to enjoy each other's company, which was hindi katulad ng dati because they were busy with a lot of things. So maganda yon. And pang-apat is syempre, always, no? Family reunification, the longingness to be with the migrant parent will always be there. No? Ito yung ko palagi when I was a child growing up into a teenager, I was always looking for my father. And dahil nga kasi walang internet sa panahon ko na yun. Pero ngayon, children could reach out to their parents. So it's very important also for the parents. No? May nagsasabi kanina, bilang magulang, ano ba pwede namin gawin para sa mga anak namin? No? Communicate with your children as much as you can. Tell them that you are okay. O kung nasaan ka, what is your situation, you have to be truthful. And then, to assure them that you are doing the best to take care of yourself and that your mom or your dad is there for you and families who are with you, your grandmother man yan, kapatid, mother or father who was left behind will also be there. So yung panahon na kailangan mag-usap yung mga magulang. What can we do to assure our children to feel safe, that their future is secure, and siyempre may mga instances din na nawalan ng trabaho at kailangan bumalik yung mga magulang. At mamaya siguro, merong mga existing organizations that could help, OFW families to connect them with livelihood opportunities. So yun, that's setting this.
Oo. Okay, thank you, Dr. Mark. Um, so it's right now, parents should really talk to the children, and we can connect that also to what Kuya Kaloy mentioned, that some children don't know what's happening. Okay. So Dr. Mark mentioned that there's a list of services. So for today, we will show you a list of services, list of psychological services that OFWs and their families can avail of. And the first two are free online psychological services. You can just check out these links. And then for mentioned also by Dr. Mark that economically it's really important to find ways to be more stable. So that's what we will talk about in third and fourth week of our webinar series. So the third one, there's a list of online services. Some are free, some are not. But there are many services there, so just check out the page, please. Okay. And with that, we can start with our Q&A. We have lots of questions from our guests, from our viewers. So let me start with the children. Um, so how is your well-being affected by your concerns about your parent situation, your family relationships, and economic situation? Kumusta kayo? Kumusta kayo given all of these concerns? So we can start with Ayanta or Vincent. Sige, si Vincent na lang. Siya yung naka-unmute.
Ayun po. Ang epekto po sa akin ng ano, is okay naman po. Wala naman pong negative na effect sa akin.
Hmm. So you're able to, Vincent is okay, he can cope. Oo. How about Ayanta?
Um, okay naman din po kami nung times na bawasan po yung salary ni mama. Adjust naman po ng maayos, and we also do family prayer po every and then din po.
Mm-mm. So the same thing, Ayanta is able to cope through prayers and then adjusting to the changes. To Lucy, Dr. Lucy, Kuya Kaloy, and Dr. Mark, as researchers and practitioners, have we looked at the economic and psychosocial emotional conditions of migrants and their loved ones equally when they face crisis? Because it seems that the focus have been either on the economic or the psychosocial emotional impact.
So let's see. If I think I understand the question correctly, it's an interesting question, which I think is about kind of the importance of looking at like the holistic sort of well-being, so and thinking about the interconnections between, say, economic well-being and psychological and psychosocial well-being. And I think actually this is definitely one of the major interests in my own research and in our project, is about trying to look at that sort of big picture, of sort of kind of the family strategy, about both emotional and economic and spiritual as well, right? So kind of a holistic well-being. And that the idea that only kind of meeting one of those needs is not necessarily going to lead to well-being, right? It's like we need to look at the whole picture together. And I think also what we're really interested in, as well as looking at the intergenerational relationships to do with that. So what does that mean from the perspective of children and parents, and together, and also families at home in the origin country and the migrants. So really trying to capture, kind of the whole picture of things instead of thinking, only about one aspect of it. So that's my thought about the question.
How about to our practitioners? In your practice, do you tackle both economic and psychosocial emotional conditions, or in other interventions that you're aware of?
Okay, well, could I go first?
Yes, please.
Okay, so one thing that we need to understand what is the unique circumstances of OFW families is that they are transnational families. When you say transnational, one loved one or one crucial family member is not at home, but in another country, sending remittances back home. And because of that transnationality, I remember in my doctoral research, it is very important for OFW children, for members of Filipino society to understand that transnationality. Because most of the time, ang palaging when we have a family discourse at school, it's always the mother and father is together with the children. And they are at one single home. And it creates a lot of stress for OFW children because our situation is not like that. And there must be a public recognition that such transnational families exist. And they are very important into the Philippine economy. So in terms of policy making, in terms of social services, there must be a specialized aspect for that, to help OFW, especially in this time of crisis. Migrant workers are at a very vulnerable situation. We do not know how long, or would there be a second wave, or how it would create other negative consequences in their lives. So they are in a very unique condition. That's why they would need specialized psychological services and help in terms of economic and livelihood opportunities. There, doing psychosocial services for OFW families and their children. But also, there are other organizations doing microfinance livelihood opportunities. For example, we have Atika in Batangas and Laguna. We have Agapay in Cotabato. And we have the Mindanao Migrant Center for Empowering Actions in Davao City. And I do hope that aside from UGAD, aside from the Episcopal Commission for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People, there will be more non-government organizations or civil society organizations that would cater to the needs of OFW families as transnational families who have different needs in terms of psychosocial and in terms of economic assistance.
Yes. Kuya Aloy, do you want to add anything? Oh, yes, Dr.
I
Lucy.
was just going to say, again, just in response quickly to Mark, and then, let's see what Kuya has to say too. I just think it's very interesting as well, because some of the work that we're doing right now in the study is looking at the financial, kind of trajectories in families, and thinking about sort of the ways that families, whether they have experienced the migration, and transnationalism or not, but kind of learn how to manage their finances in a way that is sustainable, right, and viable for the future. Because of course, like any of us, it's sort of like the shock of COVID, is so related to, the sense of insecurity that comes up is sort of relative to whatever kinds of security making actions, were being taken, kind of in advance, right? And I think that it even boils down to something, I think, as simple as like how migrants remit the money back, to the Philippines, and, sort of, and like how, what happens in lockdown when, say a family is waiting for remittances, but isn't able to go out to get those remittances, because they're, say with Hong Kong, for example, there's this disconnect between the banking system here in Hong Kong and the banking system in the Philippines that just make it, and the way remittances are moved, that's kind of, that there's this new problem that arises all of a sudden when people are in in lockdown because of COVID, and that it just kind of, I think it draws attention to the ways that there are a lot of structural impediments to facilitating transnationalism, not just in the origin country, like Mark highlighted, but also in the host countries, and that there is a need for figuring out better how to put these things in place so that they can work more freely all of the time, but especially under the time of stress. So back to you, Melissa.
Yes. So thank you. I'll read one comment from Mr. Edmond Hernandez Hugo, and then maybe we can get Kuya Kaloy's reaction, because this is connected to what you mentioned. The feeling of the anak OFW about discrimination on their parents is brought by the media news and the LGU policy. Much more generally, the anak OFW are worried on the situation of their parents, but what are they worrying most is the possibility of transferring them from private school to public school. And this is based on their survey. Yes. Do you have any insights about this, Kuya Kaloy?
Yes, ma'am. Totoo po yun na
Yeah,
ano yun.
true.
Yes, totoo po yan na nakalagay yung sa question na from private, mapapunta sa public. Kaya sinasabi namin doon sa ibang mga bata na pwede naman sabihin na next time na lang mag-enroll kung talagang wala o hindi talaga pwede. And then, yun ang ano sa kanila from nung mag-aaral lang gano'n na ililipat sila. Kaya mostly ng mga client namin ngayon, ilan lang ang nag-enroll, hindi pa sila nag-enroll sa kasi yun na nga, hindi pa nila alam kung anong stability ng financial nila.
Okay, thank you. And then we have a question from Ms. Elvira Daliva. How do we help our OFW children look forward to a more positive future amidst the challenges of COVID-19? Okay. Who wants to address this? Any suggestions?
Okay, hello Ma'am Ilby.
Yes.
Oo. Ngayon po kasi ang panatag program may binubuong webinar workshop. Webinar and focus on the feelings of the OFW children, and then communication skills and positive coping. So we can offer this webinar.
So we have a webinar. Maybe Kuya Kaloy can just share a link to the in the comment section later, so that our viewers can check it out.
Okay.
And then last one, there are viewers who are asking for more information from Dr. Lucy's study. So we will show you the slides. So Miss Beth Ram is asking where they can get a copy of your study.
Yeah, I think actually Marla and I had a little discussion about this. That we will make some things available with the recording of the webinar, like the slides, but as well, many of the publications, all of the publications actually from our study are open access, so we can make available the links so that if you want to access the actually published research, that you can do that as well. So Marla and I will do a bit of work about that later. We're working with the tech team, to share the material from the slides. And thank you for your interest. And then myself or any of the other authors in the study would be happy to answer questions for you after you've had a chance to look at things.
Okay, so please check out those studies. And let's have our final thoughts from our speakers. So just a short message to the children of OFWs. Let's start with baliktad naman. Dr. Mark, can you give your short message to children of OFWs, please?
Yeah, the title of this webinar is My Bukas Pa, the children of OFWs in the time of COVID-19. One thing that we need to acknowledge is that children of OFWs in this time and era have a sense of agency. Meaning, narinig natin, no, kay Ayanta at kay Vincent na they're doing okay is because they're able to cope up with the situation. But they cannot do it on their own. They need the support of their family members. They need the support of their parents to always connect with one another, to always have, what will be the plan B if this will happen to me. And the children will be involved in those family discussions because they are part, no, of those crucial decision making. Ang isa sa mga bagay na we need to practice as Filipinos is that we need to involve our children because we have a right, they have a voice now when it comes to decisions that will affect their lives. And they need also to be consulted. Kailangan pag-usapan what will be the next steps that our family will take in order to address this situation. And I think that is connected now with the question a while ago, how do we make them move forward? Things will go forward if we begin at the position of strength na hindi parang biktima ang mga anak ng OFW.
Right.
Kundi meron silang kakayahan, they can move. What they need is their parents to be there with them to say, we will face this future together.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mark. Let's listen to Kuya Kaloy. His last words, message to the children of OFWs.
Okay. Ang title nga may bukas pa. And number one na pwede nating gawin ay be open sa inyong nararamdaman. That's one. Huwag magtiis. Huwag matakot. Huwag matakot na hindi masabi ko ang nararamdaman. Pangatlo ay be open sa communication. Kung ma-reject ka, it's okay. Kung okay, basta maging ang maayos sa communication sa inyo at sa inyong mga magulang. At pinakahuli, ang pinakamahalaga ay lalo pang maging malapit sa Diyos.
Okay, so open communication with the parents and to pray also.
Be to yourself.
Yes, be true to yourself. Dr. Lucy.
So Melissa and everyone else. And I guess, sounds like we all have a similar message, which is about the importance of, of openness and communication and sharing, sharing the stories of faith and hope, which I heard, shared by Ayantha and Vincent, and I suspect is also, the message of many of the other children. I think sometimes, that, the children may not realize how important their expressions of affection are, to, and in fact, maybe even more important, than they would be under quote unquote normal circumstances,
right.
Because, whether it's inside the home or, with the family far away. So trying to create that, that culture of openness in the family, I think is really important.
Thank you. And then let's go to Vincent, your message to other children of OFWs.
Apo. Para po sa mga katulad po namin na na-stuck po sa bahay at katulad po namin na anak po ng mga nag-OFW po, keep motivating yourself po. Wag pong madadown. And wag pong mag-alala kasi ginagawa naman na po lahat ng gobyerno natin, lahat po ng makakaya nila para po magkaroon po tayo ng mas maganda at mas maayos na future.
Yes. Okay, so don't worry, the government is doing its job. And last, we have Ayantha, your message to your fellow children of OFWs.
Yan po. To my fellow anak OFWs, to trust parents, let's be open to them, communicate with them always, and let's hope, believe that we will have a better future pa.
Yes. Okay. So listen to your parents. You have very wise words from both the young and the young at heart. Okay. Yes. So thank you so much. So I'll give the floor to Dr. Marla. for the closing remarks.
Hello, this is a young at heart person trying to come up with a closing remarks. I really have the pleasure of thanking everybody, on behalf of our partners, the University of Hong Kong and the Episcopal Commission for Migrants and Itinerant People. I wish to extend our thanks to all our resource persons, to Iantha and Vincent, to Kuya Kaloy, and to Dr. Mark, and of course to our partner Lucy, and to our very, very competent moderator, Dr. Melissa Garabiles. To all of you, our very engaged participants, thank you for joining us and for your comments and suggestions. A recording will be made available shortly on SMC's Facebook page, and also for the questions and comments that we were not able to address during this webinar, we will be posting our responses to your comments and questions together with the recording. So the next webinar will be on July 10, also a Friday, from 3 to 4:30 p.m. We would also appreciate it if you could take the time to accomplish a feedback form so that we could improve our future webinars. It's very difficult really to come up with a summary of of the very rich discussion that we've had. But I think when we go back to the title of this webinar, I think we have a pretty good sense that from the children themselves and also based on the sharing of our other resource persons, there is still a tomorrow. Tomorrow is coming up. And in doing so, I think what we can get also from the sharing, especially from the sharing of Yanta and Vincent, is that we need to value the voices, the perspectives, the feelings, and views of our young people. I'd also like to thank Mr. Justin Interno and Mr. Dax Alfindo of Dream Agri Media, our very competent and most gracious tech team, and Ms. Kimberly Juanilio and Mr. John Paul Assis of SMC for their assistance with the preparations and attending to the webinar's technical needs. And lastly, I'd like to remind our Anak OFW viewers, please don't forget to send your thoughts about the webinar on or before 5 p.m. on July 4. In closing, I'd like to mention this, that in Lord of the Rings, Frodo uttered a wish that we can identify with during this time. And he said, "I wish none of this had happened." To which the wise Gandalf replied, "So do all who live to see such times. But that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. May we decide wisely, justly, and kindly with the time that is given us now. So keep safe and see you again on July 10. Maraming salamat po. Thank you. Okay. Shall we have